Hey there, and welcome to the Brittany Wheeler Show. Join Brittany as she interviews incredible people whose stories will uplift you and remind you the life you long for is just ahead. Buckle up for an inspirational ride to your best life. Take it away, Britt.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Brittany Wheeler Show. I am your host, Brittany Wheeler, and I am so grateful and excited that you have decided to join us today. If it's your first time, welcome. Our goal is to bless one person every episode that I'm interviewing ordinary people living extraordinary lives. If this is your second, third, fourth time, you know the drill, and buckle up because we have another incredible guest that we're getting to chat with today. Someone that you're going to feel her authenticity. You're going to feel her story, and I know that you're going to leave like a little challenged and a little excited to do what you can do in your own life. So let's go ahead and introduce her. She is a mom, a daughter, a sister, a friend, an entrepreneur, a life coach, a visionary, a servant heart, a leader, and a sister in Christ. Please welcome my friend, Jeanette Cofer, to the Brittany Wheeler Show.
Thank you, Brittany. It's a pleasure to be here. Absolute pleasure.
So excited to have you, and excited that we also did not even talk about the fact that we're wearing the very similar color choice
Did
today.
not plan this.
You get on, you're like, wow, our stylist
I got
must
the
have
memo.
been, they must have been coordinated. It's fantastic. I love that. And also it like just aligns, if anybody is watching and listening, that like we are very aligned in what we think. So it is not necessarily a shock that we are wearing similar
Right.
colors
Absolutely
today.
not.
It's amazing. The next segment of the show that I pass into, it's like one of my favorites, honestly, outside of the conversations, is getting to allow the guest to speak and to set the stage for who are we? How do we know each other? Why did you say yes to the podcast? Just, you could pick one of those, but just really get to set them up on who and how do we know each other, or why are you here? So I'm gonna let you decide and answer.
You want me to answer how we know
Yeah.
each other and how?
Yeah, you can pick. It could be how we met or a story
Yeah.
of us or
Well,
why you said yes to the show. Yeah.
so it's interesting you should ask that because I thought that's something you were going to ask me about. And so interesting. When I met you, it was at the retreat.
Mhm.
So in Carolina Beach in a beautiful ocean view setting. And I thought, wow, there's something special here. You've got a gift. I know what I'm called to do and what some of my gifts are, but and one of those is seeing them in other people, and you had it. So when I figured out, and I didn't know right away that you were doing this type of work, it wasn't until we connected and talked one on one that I learned. But when you asked, I'm like, yes, absolutely yes, because it's like you described me as authentic. That's how I felt about what your purpose and passion is as well. So. Yep, and that was only, what, December, November? So it
Yeah.
hasn't been that long, but yeah, I felt the connection for sure.
Well, thank you. It's very
Mhm.
sweet. It means a lot. It's always nice to be surrounded with people that can just see you even for a
Yeah,
minute, right?
not sweet,
Um,
honest.
yeah, 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 that too. Yeah. So I want the audience to really get back to the beginning. I want you to share, who were you as a young girl? And, I think your degree is fascinating. So let's start with that. Let's start with, who were you as a young girl, and share with us what brought you to college. And you can actually tell the audience like what your degree was, because I find it really fascinating and fun.
It didn't start out to be that, but it's sociology and anthropology. And I had a minor in Latin, which, unspoken language. But gosh, going back, I was the last of five. So the gap between the oldest and me is 21 years. The gap between the youngest and me is 12 years, all same, parents. So I had a little bit of independence, but I also had a little bit of, I got to go, not prove it, but I had a little bit of that. It's the first time I go to college, a traditional liberal arts college. And, early on, I thought, oh gosh, I want to be an attorney. I don't know why. I just thought that would be something cool. So it started out as poli-sci. And I'm like, no, I really love the justice part of, for the people. But then went into psychology. So I was going to be a psych major. And I'm like, oh, I love the mind. And, all of those things kept ramping up. Like today, kids go to school and they're like, I'm going for this, when they're a senior in high school. I'm like, I had no idea. I had all these amazing ideas, right? But couldn't really pinpoint it. So I was in an anthropology class with this amazing woman professor. Um, and she gave me this glimpse into the study of the culture of the people, like from their roots. And I'm like, oh, I could see like the poli-sci stuff in that with the justice and the norms and the rules. Plus, then I could see the mind aspect of the psychological behaviors and the triggers and the habits. But then you see like, they're digging up bones and they're seeing like what they used to eat or how they used to live from 1,000 years ago. And I knew I didn't want to be an archaeologist, but it was fascinating to me. And then the sociology part too, where I ended as I'm going to go be a therapist. That didn't happen either. So, but I feel like I get to use that all the time. So that's sort of the little bit of the beginnings of that. I had an amazing college that gave you a lot of um, rope to do a lot of branch out into a lot of different spaces to really learn. So
cool. How do you think just getting to hear the age gap of
Mhm.
oldest to youngest, like how is that framed a lot for you of being the youngest of five, but not just like youngest of five and there's 5 to 7, maybe 10 years apart. We're talking about a whole human between you and your oldest
Yeah.
sibling.
Yeah. So I remember being at the mall. This is something I hadn't even thought of until just this moment. And somebody saying, "Oh, I saw you at the mall with your grandma at school the next day." And it didn't bother me at all. But it was the first time that I thought, "Oh, everybody else's parents aren't as old as my parents." It was literally the first time it dawned on me. I was probably, a teenager. Um, so I think the way that that's helped shape and form me is I lost my parents really early. I was 35, 38 when I lost my mom. Actually, 38. And then lost my dad, a little bit years later. But to not have parents at a younger age was odd, but I also and hard. But I also had these siblings that, the oldest two could have been my parents. My brother was 21 when I was born. My oldest sister, got married when I was 2. So I had some motherly advice and, relationships. And then my other 2 sisters, the one closest to me in age, 12 years, she and I are like best girlfriends, right? So there's just it was a neat way to grow up because I got a lot of different varying. I got a lot of advice, but I got to see a lot of things of what not to do, what worked. It was fascinating, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like your own life is an anthropology study, honestly,
Yeah,
right?
kind of.
The study of cultures and people and just growing up in that dynamic.
Yeah.
And what was it like dreaming as a young girl, right? Because you had such an age gap, right? Where your siblings were doing dramatically different things than you were. So the ideas necessarily of Barbies or playing with your siblings was so different because you were doing such different things in your life. So like what was dreaming like even as a young girl?
Well, I had a niece that was only 4 years younger than me. So my sister had a baby early, but she and I grew up more doing the playing than any of my siblings. So I had that, grateful. We're still really close today. But the dreaming aspect from from early on, I've gotten visions through my dreams and didn't really realize what they were until much later when I got closer to God and figured out, oh my gosh, this is it. But the dreaming was always like, I gotta go make something of myself, or I've got to go, and it wasn't really approving, but my mom never worked. And she worked right before I went to college. My dad was a baker. He was an amazing baker. I think he said his highest earning income year was $18,000 with 5 children. So I always thought, I want to go to school. I didn't love school, but I loved learning and I loved to work and then make money. So, there was all these things I was striving for. And a lot of the dreams in the early on were, how can I be creative? How can I help people? Always loved, that's been a core since the moment I could first remember a thought. And how can I make money doing that? So,
I'm so interested now. What were your parents like? Share a little bit of that with us because they just seem so sweet and darling, and I just want to
well,
give a
I
little
mean,
space
sweet
for
and
them.
darling. Yeah, my mom, was one of my siblings would say, I think mom loved us too much. I said, and she's not a mom. To this day, she's not a mom. And when I became a mom, I said, there is no such thing as loving someone too much. there was not ever a single doubt of what we meant to her. She was born to be a mom. And she was going to be a nun before she met my dad. She and devout Catholic every single Sunday, which I'm not a Catholic practicing any longer. So yeah, she was a lovely, lovely human being. My dad was in the Navy, met my mom, complete opposite. Had a tattoo on his arm of a different woman's name, and we're like, "We're great on this, Dad." We had to get that filled in because he met my mom. They were young. They were, I think 19 when they got married, and he was 20 something. So yeah, I mean, he was probably a hellion, and bent the rules. And the coolest part, hard for my siblings still, I know sometimes, but they got a different version of my dad than I did. And I just, I used to believe in luck. I don't believe in luck anymore. I know it's divine and what it's about, but I was given him and he was given me for such purpose because it was a completely different relationship that allowed me to really become who I am. And with my mom too. But they were never, yeah, they were sweet. And my mom was sweet. My dad was fun, but they also lived lives like this. They didn't live the life of this because they were so opposite. And, back then, not that I'm a proponent of, divorce, but back then you didn't do that under any circumstance. 'Cause
Yeah. Yeah. You could definitely say you were a love child.
yeah,
I feel
I
like
was a big surprise child.
yeah. Like a beautiful
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
like a love of God child, a love of your parents' child, like a mixture, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, someone told my mom, someone said, "Oh, she was an accident." And my mom said, "No, she was my bonus. I was the bonus baby." And my dad was like, "She was the biggest surprise in my life." So, yeah, it
but so special. And
was.
do you think I asked this question because I have a friend, her
Mhm.
fifth came when the youngest was already 4 or 5, and they were not planning. What it seems to me and what I'm experiencing, getting to know her story and things and getting to hear her heart, I'd love to know, do you feel like you, as in being the last born, the bonus baby, was redemption for them, healing for them, growth in their marriage?
Not growth in the marriage, but no, the turning point of the growth in their marriage is when my mom got cancer. And then I always knew they loved each other. I just don't know that they didn't do anything together. My dad worked a ton. My mom didn't. She took care of the kid. Not she didn't work. She did the hardest work,
Yeah.
raising the kids and
Yeah.
taking care of the house and all that. But yeah, so I don't think it brought them closer, but I think they individually, I brought something to their lives that was joyful to them. So
That's
at least
sweet.
that's what they told me.
Yeah. Well, I will take their word for that.
I'm
That's
just
what
kidding. I
that's
mean,
what we're
that's
gonna say.
awesome.
That's what we're
Like,
gonna say. And it's interesting your mom was gonna be a nun. My grandfather was gonna be a priest.
oh,
And he knew my grandmother growing up. And he went through all 4 years of seminary to really figure out, like, was he gonna take my grandmother as his bride, or was he gonna go
stick
and right? And so I just think it is
with
I think that when I think about those moments like my grandfather or your mom, I just am so grateful that they were listening to the spirit, that they were listening to God. I think often in the church, regardless of your denomination, that we aren't really listening. And so we make decisions that are based on what somebody told us we should do, the culture of that potentially religious community, and it's not actually what God's heart is, right?
right.
And it really doesn't. It could be Catholic, it could be Lutheran, it could be it doesn't even matter, right? And so I think there's so much that we're experiencing, just in this beautiful Jesus movement that is like moving away all of the noise, right? All of the excess that it doesn't really matter. And growing up Catholic myself, like sometimes there's a lot of noise, right? About rules and expectations that we're being taught or being told without understanding. Doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make them not beautiful, but it makes it really hard if that's the only reason why you're following them, right? And
And
you don't
as
have
a
an
young
understanding.
person, even harder because you really have a lack of understanding. So, I mean, my mom found great, she's a devout Catholic. She found great, pride in that and peace. And I never did, but yeah.
So what would you say would be your God story, right? So you obviously knew God. Like what was share
Yeah.
with us that journey of knowing God as a young age and where did you honestly pursue your own new relationship with him?
Before I answer that, there's an amazing book by Priscilla Shirer called
Mm.
Discerning the Voice of God that I'm actually listening to. And it is, I'm in reading. It's all about listening, what you just said. Like when you stop the noise and have another friend that talks about holding every thought captive. It's when you stop and you really listen. That's when he's always talking, but that's when we can hear. It's been an amazing story. So I grew up in Ohio, and when I lost my mom and we moved to Charlotte, I was married at the time. There was an amazing experience that we got invited to by an older, it was a babysitter, but she was older. She was like in her 30s. And I had a 4-year-old and a 6-month-old at the time. So we hired this lady to do some sitting for us at night. And she said, "You've got to come to this church with me." And it's Stephen Furtick's church called Elevation. Um, when I stepped in that church, and it was during worship. It was not during the sermon or the message, which was always good. And, we were there when it was small and not nearly as big as it was. That was probably 14 years ago now. Um, I remember sitting in worship, standing actually, and having chills and tingling and then crying. And I'm like, well, I'm not super emotional. And the chills, I wasn't cold. And I'm like, what is this? And, later to know that's the Holy Spirit. But all I know is he kept saying, come back for more, come back for more. And I was in a busy season of my life too, with working full time and having kids and having a marriage that wasn't the best marriage. So there was a lot of noise then. And I didn't know how to practice and become closer to him. I've always known he was there. We used to go to mass every Sunday. We're always connected, but I never read the Bible before. I was never in, like, what's a small group? I went to like PSR or CCD every Monday, and I remember thinking, like, what can I fake to get out of this? Like, I didn't love going because it wasn't
Yeah.
fulfilling. Whereas
Yeah.
my younger one goes to youth group and she will forego anything to get there, which,
So
that's
cool.
amazing, right? So that was probably my first, like, oh, this is how it's going to work. This is what you're going to do. Now I need to be obedient. And then fast forward, 15 years later, I think probably really in the last 5 years with some huge life events that have happened, personally with me, with my kids, with work. And then you get older and you're like, okay, I need to lean into this. I've been closer to him than I've ever been in my entire life. And the way you can pray and learn how to pray and then learn how to listen and then obedient, and I'm on the obedience track at the moment, it is miraculous. Uh, It's hard to, it's really just hard to even describe what that is. And when you take it into business, whether someone knows that you are or aren't, it can still impact.
I mean, so much. And we could have an entire podcast just on that
Right?
conversation about
Oh,
faith and business, right?
right.
Um, how do you, and I think I'm very interested in this because I think there's a lot of different types. I know there's a lot of different types of people listening to our
Mhm.
podcast. And the reality is people are hurt. The reality is people get hurt by people. And we think that it's the body of the church. We think that it's this, religious sect, whatever it is. And the reality is people hurt people. We're broken.
Right.
This is not me at all, belittling someone's hurt or saying that it's not just, right? But it does give a very different perspective when it comes to faith, right? Because then we also ultimately connect God into that pain and
Of
we
course.
decide that, like,
Why?
well, he
Yeah.
was a part of that problem when the reality was it was really just humans improperly stewarding. And I
Mhm.
think that you've had your own walk while it was, you've come to this beautiful place. I think there's a lot of people who grow up in a ritualistic, legalistic faith and believe that's the only way and don't feel that that's the way that they want to live, raise their children. don't necessarily know where to start, how to start, what to do, and are kind of fearful of anything outside of that, right? Because it seems so foreign. There is this really toxic comfort about walking into a Catholic church that like is like, oh, it's what it always was, right? And it's not a bad thing. This is not me shaming anybody that practices Catholicism. I have incredible friends that practice that, but it is a little strange that like that comfort is so comforting, but yet it was a place of such misunderstanding and lack of spirit and
Or
lack
even
of.
when you walked into Elevation, I'm looking around, I'm like, okay, people are in jeans, which, okay, you didn't do that the mass long ago. You didn't ever.
Mhm.
And then they're raising their hands, and it's like I'm at a rock concert.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
this is weird. And
Yeah.
then you start listening to the words, and you're like, oh, yeah. I mean, for the first several times, I was not in my element at all because it was different.
Yeah.
So,
And how do you go about, I think the biggest thing for me is like, how do you go about shedding that, right? How does someone listening who only knows a ritualistic, legalistic form of religion,
well,
Baptist, Lutheran, Episcopal, Catholic, it doesn't matter.
I'm gonna use your words. You just keep doing it. You told me that once not too long ago.
I did.
You
I
get a
did.
taste of it and then you just keep going back and you keep, it's almost like the habit of, and not that that's a habit, but yeah, you just keep going and then seeking, like, put me where I'm supposed to be. Who's supposed to be with me? Are my girls? Sometimes my ex-husband went, sometimes he didn't. But so yeah, just being hearing.
Mm. Yeah, I love that you were invited to go too. I think a lot of people, need to just
I wouldn't
accept
have
those
went.
invites.
Yeah, I wouldn't have
Yeah.
went.
Yeah.
I mean, she met us at the door and walked us in. It was like, this is great.
Yeah. VIP service right here. Yeah. Otherwise you just don't know. And,
Right.
and I think there's something to be said too about like, there's an episode that is technically already out, according to those that are listening. And my friend asks in the episode, my friend is a pastor, and I was doing it. It's a dual episode with two of my friends, and one is focused on fitness, one's focused on faith. It's a part two of the sustainability conversations that I started at the beginning of the year. And my friend Kevin asks my friend Brandon, like, as a pastor, like, how do you find a church? And I think that is like, I think there's a lot of people that are wondering, but get so overwhelmed by even like, well, how do you know? Like, how, how do you know which one is good? Is there a bad church? Like, is there a yellow pages? Like, how do you search? How do you Google? And so I think there's a lot of people just in general that would potentially practice like you're saying and go in and go over and over and over again. But where to even look, where to even find it
Yeah.
is overwhelming.
Right. Well, and you just pray for, I have somebody now I'm praying for, like, have someone invite them. You can pray for that yourselves too. Like, I love the discovery. Like, after college, I thought, okay, if I can't practice or don't feel called to practice the Catholicism aspect, which in college I didn't go to church at all. I met with all kinds of I went to different churches. I met with a group of Buddhists because at one point I thought, oh, I'm going to do this. But like the discovery aspect, I enjoy that. I know a lot of people may not, but it's almost like you'll know when you get there. And just because you're there in one community doesn't always mean that you have to be in that community for 20 years either. The church grows and changes, and so does the person. So just the discovery and leaning into how you feel when you're there and who you're surrounded by and what that feels like, you just know. And if you
I,
don't just know, then you're probably not at the right one.
True. I love that you talk about the discovery phase because I think that is just such a beautiful place that a lot of people don't. I will say a lot of people that are already Christians, like the idea of understanding and educating and just being interested in something different uh feels like blasphemy uh to what they believe. And what I think is really funny, and I'm just gonna say it, is like, God knows your heart. God
Yeah.
knows your heart. If you are worshiping other gods or other things or idols, he's gonna know anyways. So like,
Right.
why is it such a weird thing that we would discover to understand, not seek to change our thoughts or change our mind. And there's obviously an element of being mindful as you go into those spaces. But for you, you knew where you were is not where you wanted to be. We have to trust that God is going to guide you through that and keep you away from the things that are maybe not going to serve you, right? But we as humans are like, we want to be God, and they shouldn't do that. And they shouldn't look into this because it's completely opposite of what we believe. And that, why do you think people don't want to come to church?
Brittany, I feel what every single morsel of greatness that you just said happens in my entire career. They're limited self-beliefs and some form of a barrier. It can be, and if it's a person doing that with the church, they're doing it probably in a lot of other aspects in their life. And ironically enough, not to promote what my business is, but the very first phase of every single thing I do is called the discovery phase. And that includes a huge self-reflection because 99.9% of the times there's some, not just a root, as you know well, it's, I mean, usually there is a root too, but there's some type of something we've allowed to be in our head as a limiting thought and a barrier that prevents us from going to where we're. And I can say that to, it's hard to do for myself, but I do that amazingly for other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you also said earlier, like, where's that coming from, Jeanette?
I know. I was like, hello, ma'am.
Don't talk about me. Let's
No.
somebody else.
Yeah.
But the same goes for finding a church. You can't, you gotta open it up and let it out. And
Yeah. And just allow yourself to discover. I think too, when we walk, posture, whatever we want to say, in a place of understanding, in a place of seeking to understand, to gain compassion, we're not in a place to receive or to necessarily walk into something that's not going to serve us, right? Because we're not going out to cause harm or to seek harm. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be cautious, but I also think that like you're going to know really quickly, like you walk into this place, it doesn't feel good. There's a reason, right? Your gut, as I believe, your gut and your Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit, are the same thing. If you don't know God and your gut is telling you that, just trust that like that is a higher power telling you to run and get out, right? I just had a conversation with a friend the other day who, was being advised by another friend, like the world's not safe, like all this stuff. And I really believe that, and I believe what she believes is like when you are in tune with the Holy Spirit, meaning, and for anybody that needs to understand, we've got God, Jesus, Holy Spirit. God was first, Jesus came, sacrificed himself, broke the veil. Because of that, his spirit was able to then be available to everybody on earth. That's why there's three. They're all in tandem. Watch the Shack, very good example of all three of those entities in a human form, which makes it three-dimensional, easy to understand. When you are walking in that spirit, you're walking in the word, the love, the wisdom of God and of Jesus. So if you're out and about and you are well versed in what God sounds like to you, those conversations, you've moved out the noise, right? You're in it. You think he's not going to tell you to walk away from that situation because it's not safe, right? So yes, there is an element of the world has darkness. It isn't going to be safe all the time. But when you're in tune with the Holy Spirit, when you're in tune with that wisdom, you're going to be told to run or not run. And you've got to be ready for that, right?
yep, absolutely. I have always had a very strong intuition and gut from really, really a young age. And I didn't know what it was. And anytime I would go against it, it worked out dismally, right? And only in my adult years have I discovered and know that it's the Holy Spirit. Another amazing, a pivotal point in my, well, there's a couple pivotal points in my life and career, but one of the most interesting things as of late that's relevant is Craig Rochell's Dangerous Prayers book. And I'm like, okay, I'm in these positions. I'm making great money. I'm not fulfilled. I need to be doing more. And I read this book, and halfway through, I'm like, oh, he keeps saying the same thing. I love Craig Rochelle. Then I read it a second time. I'm like, oh my gosh. And he even says in the middle, at some point in the book, if you are not ready to accept and know that this is really a dangerous prayer and it's going to happen when you believe, put the book down or stop reading. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to finish. You caught my attention. And then I'm going to read it again. And I started doing it, and he started stripping every single thing that wasn't supposed to be there, things that were pride, things that I defined as success, things that people that were put in my path as tests, CEOs that were, a lot of amazing CEOs, one that was fraudulent, and that was a test. Like, oh, they're going to give you a lot of money, and you're going to see this, and you're going to walk away. Like each thing, it was a from that book. So it was another just amazing experience to not accept what you're not called to do and to listen. So
Yeah, I think a lot of us too will step into those spaces not invited. And then we wonder why we're riddled with fear, anxiety, stress. That could be as simple as I talked about this last spring, and it still matters to me. Is like we all feel like if we're not going to do it, nobody else will. But we're not all called to donate to the same charity, to feed the homeless, to help with sex trafficking. We're not meant to do it all. We're not. And so it's really important to trust, what are you feeling excited about? What are you feeling peace about? What are you feeling that you like are being drawn to be a part of? That is something you say yes to. Don't let the guilt of the guy at the store asking if you want to round up for the St. Jude's donation, right? Be the thing that you have to be a part of. And I'm saying that as an example because I think we all have these moments where we've got to be and do everything, right? And if we don't give,
well, and
who
it's
else is
okay
going
to
to?
say no because you're standing true to where your faith is channeled and harnessed as well. Now take what you just said and think of a male executive, and you can't use the feelings part, right? Because then they say, well, there's a will in all of this too. But there's a fine balance between trusting where the Lord's calling you to be and who to be and who you already are and where you're supposed to place your talents and find your purpose to there's a fine balance between that and the will to go make it happen. Because a lot of times when they're in those seats, they're overcome by the I've got to go and I've got to do. And it's only going to be me, like you just said. Nobody else is going to be able to do this. So, there's a balance. He gave us will for purpose as well, but make sure that it's following the path that he's designed for the will to be had, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think like I talk about this. I also thought about this earlier. I think it's so
Mhm.
cool that your dad was an entrepreneur and you're an entrepreneur. Is there any other entrepreneurs? Did your siblings also become?
No, no. I'm a nurse, and um, someone was in HR, and one's an artist and a mom. Mm-mm.
Yeah. So you followed your dad's footsteps. Indirectly, of course.
I
Obviously he was
never
a
thought
baker,
of
but
that either. Like, he had his own
really?
bakery yeah, he had his own bakery for a short period of time, but mostly worked in grocery store bakeries or bakeries that weren't his own. So he wasn't a businessman, but yeah. And I'm not really so sure he loved what he was doing either. So
They love to bake? Or
yeah,
you're not
but he
sure?
probably never really wanted to do that for a job, but that was all he knew.
Hmm. What do you think he would have done if he was given the choice and the freedom to do something different?
He loved woodworking. Well, he loved the water too. He was in the Navy. Um, but probably something, with his hands. He's built a million neat things. So
That's
yeah, that
cool.
or a pilot. He'd probably want to fly planes because he had a strong love of the small airplanes. So
That's cool.
maybe that was
And one of your siblings is an artist, so that tracks. That tracks
yeah,
that
yeah.
like that wanting to create and to
Yeah,
build and
she's
to
extremely just talent and not even doing it for profit. Like she's super creative, talented mind that way.
do. I love that.
Yeah.
We talk about choosing your heart. We're switching gears a little bit. We talk about choosing your heart in this podcast, and I'm interested to see where you go with this question. So the choosing your heart is a crossroad moment where multiple decisions are hard. Uh, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. All one, two, three, four decisions are all hard, but ultimately the one that you choose is going to lead you to the better version of yourself. I use sometimes the example of like Chick-fil-A versus a salad, right? Both decisions are hard for various reasons. Which one is going to lead you to the better version of yourself? So I would love to know, what is a choosing your hard crossroad moment for you, and share that with us.
Yeah, there's two that come to mind. And this sort of could be dovetailed together because one's professionally and one's personal, but they sort of, do this, which is why, when people are like, "Oh, you're an executive coach and a life coach," I'm like, "Yeah," because there's no executive that doesn't also have a life, right? And vice versa. Like it's all mixed up. Um, I think, I had my career for longer than I've even had my oldest daughter, who's almost 18. So I had that before I had kids, right? So when I had children, I thought, well, okay, this is hard because work, I thrived in that and loved that. And you got instantly rewarded when you did a great job.
Yeah.
And then you become a mom and you're like, wow, I've never known love like this. But it's also hard and you not get an instant satisfaction. Never instant, love for sure. But so when I took the break of after working for 20 some years, I was at a startup that it was an amazing startup, but it was a ton of hours and work and mind space and effort. And I loved every single minute of it. But I also had these little girls and in a marriage that wasn't great. So I had these little girls that I was traveling a lot and sort of feeling like I was not doing my role there well at all. So, then it's taken me a while to get over some of the guilt of that. But I think leaving that job, and I've never quit a job without having something else to do. And most of the time it wasn't even me seeking, it was somebody saying, "Hey, come work for me." So I never was made that hard choice. So while it was hard professionally, it was something that, and then I wasn't leaning in, to hearing God then as I am now. I wished I would have been. It would have felt easier. But I knew I needed to do that also for the kids. So pivotal, I mean that sounds silly, but all the things that happened after that were God signs of like, here's why you're supposed to be home. Here's what you're supposed to see. Here's how you're supposed to protect. Here's what you're supposed to be doing later in life that ended in a divorce. And, it's just my girls and I now, they have a relationship with their dad, but where we're at in our lives and how they're progressing forward is the best it could possibly be. Um, but yeah, so that was hard.
Yeah. I mean, and I think when you get down to the root of that, the challenge is that you're stripping away an identity that you carried for so long.
Yeah.
And
6 weeks in, I thought, "Well, I made the biggest mistake. I didn't fit in with the PTA moms. I didn't fit in at the different circles because I was always the working mom. I felt like I was losing, like, respect of my professional community." And yeah, it was, and it seems silly to say it wasn't hard. That was a pivotal moment, honestly. I've lost my parents, which was hard. I've never had something I couldn't overcome. And I used to be fearful of different things. And as God placed even harder situations than that are deeply personal that I wouldn't talk about on a podcast, I will someday when my kids are older. But those things, the closer you get, the fear goes away. I literally can tell you, I have no fear. I know every single thing is predetermined in my life, in my children's lives, and I have no fear. I used to have a lot of fear on, what if they died? What if this happened? What if something happened to me? Like, I know he's going to take care. So that's, I think, the start of that pivotal work moment where I quit helped me develop all of those other foundational things. And then I get to teach my kids that, which, wow, amazing.
yeah, and also just like what was on the other side of, like you were this very high powered professional that was, and a mom, right? And a wife. And what it really seemed like was God just reworked those things. By you walking away from your career, God just reworked your identity first for him, right? And then bringing it down because and I could be crazy, but I think that there's a lot of women out there that just struggle with this on all sides of the spectrum of how can I be insert and insert, right? And sometimes it is, I've always been a professional. Like, how can I see myself being a mom? And what's really interesting, like, you can't, you and I both know you can't do it on your own. So when you invite God into that, he will create a way that you can't really ever plan, right? Like, you're in that right now. Like, you're in that getting to be a life breather, an entrepreneur, and still be even more present than you were as a high powered professional with being a mom. It doesn't come without sacrifice, right? It doesn't come without being willing to give up comfort, right? Enemy. I love, one of my friends always says this: good is the enemy of great.
Yeah. Right. Well, you just said something, Brittany. You just said, and it triggered something. I'm like, oh, I used to respond with this. You said, you can't do it alone. You know, my first trigger of what I used to always say for years and years and years. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Because I was a little bit of a never a control freak. I mean, some people think I'm a little type A, but I'm like, I'm in control. I can get it done. I can do. And I'm like, that's when that was like looking back, I made it harder doing that and not trusting and not having the fear is just, it's an indescribable feeling of like what success is defined as.
Yeah, and a lot of moms. I just had a conversation, that episode came out in March, of like, oftentimes also as mothers, it's the, well, I can I can just do it. I can just, it's faster if I, right? And I think that, and I talk about this pretty often on the podcast, is like, if we don't start with the little things, regardless of what it is, got to go to the gym, discipline, getting healthier, asking for help. What in God's name makes you think that when something really big happens, you're going to choose, right, to do
Right,
that? You're just not, right?
right,
So
right.
if you're not willing to do the laundry when you don't feel like it, if you're not willing to ask a friend to say, hey, can you cover this coffee for me? I'm waiting for my check. You think when you need thousands of dollars because you've just been scammed by someone and your mortgage is due, you think you're going to ask for help then? No.
Right. But if you step two steps ahead of everything you just said, there's a reason why they're not doing the laundry. They're not asking a friend for money for a meal. There's always a root and always a barrier. Always. So, and ironically too, you know, I've had people ask me in the past why I'm not working or promoting to work with women or moms, or I've always felt a little bit like, yeah, I've been there, I've done that. And I could help another mom or professional, and I've worked with a few, but most of my clientele, it's been probably 75% men and the rest women. Because to be honest with you, I like the challenge of changing the hearts and the minds and the habits of an executive that thinks they really got it all and I can do everything, right? They're easier to change than women because if you get them hyper focused on the right path and define what's missing, you know, there's a lot of executives and CEOs and middle level managers that have all the money and all the things and the houses and the cars and the wives and whatever wife, I mean, or, you know,
I was like just shaking my head. Yeah, wives.
yeah, yeah, no. And there's still something missing. That I love. Like if I can help fill that and have them discover what that is, so they get hyper focused and they can compartmentalize. Women, most of the women, friends, colleagues, clients, we we don't compartmentalize. We are at work and we're thinking about 10 other things all the time. And it's a longer game. And being in it brings, as a coach and a mentor, bringing them through that takes me back to that too. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to get to compartmentalize and work with, you know, the male clientele because it's a challenge. But then I don't know, there's a small gift there that I think I have where
Yeah, not everybody, I mean, not everybody can do that. I mean, not everybody can. I've
or
loved
wants
working
to.
with male entrepreneurs. Like, that to me
Yeah.
is a lot. Yeah, not wanting to is a good one.
But
Um, I like being in spaces where I'm challenged and
Yeah.
I'm forced to get out of my comfort zone, right? And so, if the more and more that I'm in spaces with people that are where I want to be, quote unquote, in some aspects, maybe not the whole thing, but in some areas, it forces me to go, okay, how am I going to buck up? How am I going to,
Right.
and I think there's an element of that as a woman that you have to emotionally compartmentalize
Yeah.
because the emotions will keep you stuck and will keep
Yep.
you exactly where
Absolutely.
you're at.
Another amazing thing in that story that I didn't share is I'm a woman. So when this client who has everything, of the world and isn't happy in their home life, or I know what the perspective is of the wife that's at home. Then is where we get to some really deep questions on, what are you what I always, if they're willing, I'll bring in the faith-based
Yeah.
discussions. I have to, be asked if they're okay with that.
Yeah.
But, to be able to watch that change, for the good of knowing what that person's thinking as well, is wonderful. And children too, like, they can hear something from their wife, but if they hear it from, a coach, but it's the same thing. It's like your kids, when they hear it from somebody other than me, they're like, oh, that must be right.
Yeah. Yeah. Third
Uh,
party validation is the most annoying and infuriating thing,
It is.
but it's very good to leverage it.
And
Yeah.
to be able to influence it and know to do it is
Yeah.
just, and it's been pretty powerful.
Mm. Yeah. And I will say, I've really enjoyed when I work with male clients when like their wives and I are aligned and we
Yeah.
didn't know it. It is such a power move
When
when,
that happens, yeah.
you
I
sit
bet.
down, right? They come to the table and they say, I was talking to my wife and she said blah, 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 and really loved the idea. She was thinking it was great. Or it's really funny because you and I were talking about this last week and I went home and I told her this. And that's literally what she was telling me. Like, that's how you know. And that's a power move, right? I think it
Or
also,
they say, oh, my wife told me the same thing. Like, yeah,
exactly,
well, then it's real because I'm not in
exactly.
your home life.
Right, right. And so whether it's business or it's personal, they're
Yeah.
getting affirming on either side that like this is the right thing. And also like I have found in those spaces of being able to, because again, as an advisor, I would advocate for their relationship, for the health and wellness of, taking
Yes,
time for date
always.
nights, right? And things like that. There's a really powerful respect that can grow, me being female and working with male clients who have wives, that like you can't, and I know you know what I'm talking about, that you can't describe it, that respect that gets grown, because I know that a lot of women are very protective of their husbands, and obviously like that can be a challenge, but the moment that you cross from what is this woman to, oh, okay, she's good, it is an immensely, it's almost like from that point on there's a fire underneath his butt that activates and motivates him to grow, and it's crazy. You probably know
Yes,
exactly what I'm talking about.
I know exactly. And then it also transforms into the workplace when you're dealing with women who are moms and wives of, that you're that are on your team that you have to empower and understand. It's wonderful when that happens.
I
So
love that.
yeah.
When you think about, being a mom and, the life that you want. We talked a little bit about this too. Just like the life you want to give your girls and what you're modeling as an example for them. How does realizing your life's purpose, right? Because that ultimately, I want to give a nutshell. That's ultimately what you do, right? And your goal is to help people realize their purpose, whether it's professionally, personally, within faith, whatever the realm in which you are then asked to come alongside and support them. So how does realizing your life's purpose help you to be the woman you need to be in your own life?
Gosh, that's a big question. Um, so when I think of having someone find their purpose, that's huge, monumental, huge, right? So I position it as I'm going to help you, in a nutshell, if there's a business or a person that's stuck, or, and I don't always word it that way, but if they want to grow the business and make more money, or if they're making a lot but they want to grow it to be able to IPO and sell it, or if they're all there and they're doing exactly what they want to be doing, why doesn't the culture feel happy? So it's how to get unrooted in those and be, and that ultimately leads to every single individual from the top to the next level all the way down. Who's there for what purpose? Are they performing in their passion? Are they uh, more than half of the time people are in the wrong seats or are there because they just need the money and it's not a, and I'm not talking about, I'm talking about the top where that has to be, that has to start at the top. Um, so yeah, that's what I do. That's what I love to do. And I innately can go in and see it like that. Um, how it's, what was the question? How it's led to my
Yeah,
purpose?
how has helped you to be the woman that you need to be?
Yeah, I just, it's innate. It's me listening to know what I'm supposed to be doing, um, and not accepting, um, because I've worked for so long and had, bigger roles, I'll go into companies and want to consult and they'll suggest, well, gosh, I have this open position to run operations or to build this team or to have this title. And I've said yes. And I need to stop saying yes for the money or the equity and start saying no and yes to here's all that I want to do and give, because that's where I'm going to be performing at my 100%. So I'm living the truth and the values of what I'm teaching my clients and my business partners and people I'm working with. Now, how that's transpired to the girls is, they're young. So to be able to, they're malleable too. So to be able to impact and have them be thinking early on, like, what's your God given purpose, right? And it doesn't mean it translates to a job, but what do you love to do? It also is a double-edged sword sometimes where you've got to use the teaching moments of my older daughter sometimes has chosen people to be around that she thinks she can fix. And, we've had some really interesting discussions where she says, well, Mom, you say everybody has the opportunity to become better. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, yes. And usually in a context of business, right? Or professional. And, I believe that for anyone, honestly. But it's not also, I used to think, and especially when I thought, oh, I'm going to be a psychologist or a therapist, like I can change that. And now I know, like, I'm there to deliver through Christ everything that I have to offer. There's a lot of tools I can help with. I can be an advocate. I can be a supporter. I can be a try this, but it's not ultimately up to me to fix or to change. And sometimes they don't. And that's a hard thing. But, it's to tell a 15, 16, 17-year-old that it was eye opening.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's
Well, and
great.
because you were like, it's like two parts of yourself. It's like, oh my gosh, she was listening. But then you're like, oh my gosh, the context that she did not get that in. You were like, oh, darn it. Like, let's go back
But I'm
for a
glad
second.
she learned that and saw it and heard it now and not when she was 30, right? I mean,
Right. Or
that's
how many
the
people
part
would
where I'm
she
like,
attempt
okay,
over and over and over
right.
again, right? To try to fix and help. And yeah, it is. I mean, obviously her heart is in a place to help people. And so it's a matter of like, what does that look like? And what does that look like to help people in a constructive way, right? And what are her giftings? I think that's so special.
Yeah. But she's going into nursing, so it's perfect that she can get that caregiving aspect in for her
Yeah.
profession.
And I think nurses experience it the most is like, okay, this is how I can help.
Yep.
And you just
Body
have to
and
release
mind.
it. And you have
Yeah.
to just allow that to happen because ultimately, like, there's going to be moments where you help and you feel it and you see it. And there's going to be moments where you see people coming back in and coming to experience. It doesn't even matter what they're helping them with, it doesn't
Right.
insert whatever. Um, and the more and more, I think you kind of shared too, of just like you can walk into a business, a company, a corporation office, and within seconds know exactly what needs to change. That's because you've walked into so many of them over and
Right.
over, and you've done it
And
so
because
many
I've
times.
done some that I've worked in the positions where I've made mistakes, like you learn the most from the things that you did wrong.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
What speaking of that, I want to end with that little nugget that just feels right. What is one little thing that you look back and you're like, man, if somebody can learn from me and not do this, whether it's professional or business or personal, whatever you want to share, What is something that you would share?
Other than finding and getting connected and hearing, becoming closer to God and becoming, in the Word, like, I wish I had that sooner, honestly. Um, I think for the younger, and I don't work with, um, 20s, early 30s typically. I wasn't the same person I am today as I was then. I remember being almost 15 years at a bank, a corporate bank, so that was prior to my entrepreneur stage, and I remember being sort of a hard ass and going in and being like, "Oh, look, I got this certification, and I can do this, and I can run the show, and I can," and I had to fire a lot of people because 'cause we'd go in and we'd put in new processes or technology or procedures, and it would make people's jobs be, we didn't need as many people because the technology did it, and this was back when technology wasn't as cool as it is today. Um, but I remember 3rd or 4th department I would go into, and one of the last ones, I had over 100 people reporting to me, and I walked into the room and was gonna, talk to them about a little bit about me and hear from them, see what questions they had about my new role. And I looked around the room and half of them looked afraid. And I was like, like a light bulb went off that they're like, oh my God, she's coming in here to put some new processes in that's going to eliminate most of our jobs. And an interesting, it was a catalyst of a moment where I'm like, how did I get so far away from loving the people? Because that's the piece I loved, is building the teams and finding the right teams. But my earlier self would, if you didn't fit in that trajectory of the right person, then out of the way. And I wasn't always kind about it. I I'm not that I was mean, but I didn't do it with as much grace as over the years I've learned to do. So I think the advice I would give on that, or like what I hope somebody wouldn't do, is remember every single one of those people are human. They have a life, they've got a family, they've got a parent, they have, financial needs, like in the way you do it. And so when I started finessing that, I would have people hug me and cry and say, "Thank you for letting me go. I've hated my job for 10 years." When you get to that place, you've like climbed to
Yeah.
the mountain and you're
Yeah.
doing it right. But just to be doing things with grace and not for the profit of making a company more money.
That was good. You
Yeah.
guys, that was not
Yeah.
prepared. So
No, you didn't. That wasn't even on my list. Yeah, no, that was good.
you
I
guys
had
are welcome because that was not something that she prepared for today. I want to wrap up with two lifestyle questions because we could
okay,
talk for hours and hours.
right.
And I think everybody would be just like, okay, what story she got next? What nugget she got next? What is your favorite coffee shop in the Carolina Beach, Wilmington area? And what's your go-to drink order?
So when I thought of that question, I don't have one.
Okay.
My go-to drink is black coffee. I
Okay.
drink it black. I don't like it super strong. No frills. My favorite place on earth to go and have a cup of coffee was my mom's kitchen table in Ohio on Orchard Avenue. Like that, when you think of like, where's my nostalgic or my favorite or one I could always go to, that was it. There isn't, and not that there aren't great places in Carolina Beach or Wilmington,
Yeah.
but nothing compares to that.
Do you do
Um,
anything special with your girls to kind of bring that out because you loved it so much? You do any like Saturday traditions or things like that?
a couple years ago, well, probably 5 years ago, I started every other year taking them on a 2 to 3 day alone. It could be drive, it could be flying, but nowhere hugely extravagant because it's 2 days, right? 3 days.
Right, right.
And I started doing that alone. And then after the second year, I'm like, if I do every other year, I'm going to run out of time and Maya's going to be off to college and not want to hang out with me anymore. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, how do I financially make it work so it's every year? And if it has to be something smaller, not as expensive. So that I've tried to do, because the one-on-one you get with them to understand their hearts, to impact, to get them out of their elements has been amazing, absolutely amazing.
Ugh. And just like just what your mom created space for you to do, you're doing for your girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet. You guys, I just want to have like, oh gosh, I'm like, I want to have everybody over right now. Let's like make waffles or do something like just wholesome and happy with each other. I love that. What is a book that you read multiple times that you believe somebody listening should read themselves?
Well, and I thought of two. I always try to have something that's fictional, but self-help. And then there was one as a parent has changed the way I do things. But The Alchemist, I don't know if
Okay.
you've read that. The
I've heard it.
Alchemist is amazing. And it's one that, there's so much truth in it. It is a nonfiction, but it's so much truth. And it's about, I could insert any client or situation I've ever been in, and it's about discovering our purpose and all the tests along the way, but just being true. And then the material things and the money at the end of the day, it's not about that. I mean, that's a means to an end. It's a means, you have to make money to take your kids or do something with them that, like I just described, as an experience. But when you're getting ready, to not be on this earth anymore, it's the emotional deposits that are being made that they're going to remember. They're not going to care what's in your bank account. And if they do, then you haven't raised them right. No, I'm kidding. But
But like kind
you know what I'm saying, right?
of.
And then the other one, there's a Love and Logic series, and it started out as like for little kids, but there's one for teens that anybody, mom or dad, that has teenagers, it's the love and logic of shifting from how you don't treat them as they're becoming a near adult. And it's monumental. For me it was, and a lot of people I've shared it with over the years have been like, wow, this was, and a therapist had shared it with me, and it's been really amazing. So
So cool. Oh my
yeah, if
gosh.
that helps anyone. So
Yes, and I'll put all that in the show notes too, so people
okay.
can like click on the link of where to find that. Where can people find you? Give us a quick 30 seconds. What are you doing now? And how can people be a part of what you're doing, and where can they find that information?
Well, I'm super excited because within the next couple of weeks, it's not really a rebrand, but I've never really worked professionally with an agency to kind of launch my business. Every client I've had up to this point has been word of mouth. Past clients, past employers, people I've worked with tell other people, it's all been word of mouth. And I'm like, I need to make this a little bit bigger, a little bit grander, impact more lives. So the website's just JeanetteCofer.com. JCO is going to be the name that I coined with a logo, and it's elevating, and it can be elevating, anyone, but it's elevating executive outcomes. So, and by doing that outcome, it's all the things that we've talked about. It's the discovery phase, the self-reflection, the let's look at the processes in your business and what isn't working. And as a result of all that work that we'll do together, will elevate your outcome. And it doesn't always just mean more money for the business, although people want to hear that, but it's
It's
elevation.
better.
Yeah. And Elevation Church was my first like piece of like, gosh, I'm elevated. Like there's magic in all of that, and magic from Christ, not, you know,
So
the Disney
cool.
magic.
Yeah. I still use
So,
the word magic
yeah.
because it's a great descriptive word.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, I will put that. I'll put on once the website's done, which it will be. Soon we'll get that in the show notes, and people can just go right there and connect and ask you questions and follow along with what you're doing. And I'm really excited because I think this is the beginning of some really awesome stuff. And this is going to be the first of many podcast episodes that you're on, and digital exposure. And I hope you'll come back because this was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. You're amazing. You already know that, but you have a gift for what you do too. So thanks for doing all this.
Thank you. I'm so glad you got to be in the studio. I think that, obviously people get to experience me outside. And a lot of people, to be fair, they talk the talk. And, they'll say that, oh, I have this and I'm good at this and I'm good at that. So it's just really cool when I get to like just bring people into it. And then for them to be like, oh, okay, yeah, like I got it. It's real. Like I get to see you in this. And it is like you talked about in this episode, when you are literally living in your life's purpose, when you're living in what you're called and meant to do, it
Evident.
radiates. Yeah.
Yep.
It
And
just
people feel it.
That's literally it. I was having a conversation yesterday with a friend. We were strategizing around some business, some marketing and different approaches for the podcast and things. And we were just talking about like how when I get in studio, with someone else, whether it's been virtual or in person, like it is you feel it. It's tangible. The guests can feel it. The experience that we're having, it's all tangible. And I'll never forget the first time I ever sat in a podcast chair with a mic in front of me, and I was like, this is it. Like this is a variation of what I'm meant to do. Um do I believe that there's going to be more as far as speaking on stages and being in moderating panels where I get to continue to do styles like this with many people? Absolutely. But it was the first time something that I just had like my own two hands working to create that wasn't this huge gesture. It wasn't like fireworks. It wasn't, this $1 million offer. It was just me sitting in an old mill building in a velour chair with a mic in front of me. And I didn't even know what I was doing. And it just went like, it was just like light vomit, all the things. And I'll never forget, like, once we finished the episode, the producer at the time, yeah, I was in, and the producer at the time goes, "Have you ever done this before?" And I said, "No." He goes, "You're the real deal. Like, that's not normal, what we just experienced."
Right. Yeah. You're natural. And you found a huge piece of your passion and purpose.
Thank you.
And then there's more to come. I can just see that too around all surrounding you.
Thank
So,
you. Thank
yeah.
you. Oh,
Great.
you guys, this was wonderful. You share this episode. There's going to be so many people that need to hear Jeanette's story, her wisdom, the nuggets she gives, maybe even connect with her and work with her in her business in Jayco. You can follow her, and we'll put all that information in the show notes. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're watching online. If you're listening, follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and hear what we're doing, and stay connected, because we just this community is incredible. It's continuing to grow, the lives that are continuing to be changed, and people that are letting us know that they're being impacted by our stories is growing, not only by the reach of the episodes, but also by the testimonies and people that are sharing it. So you guys, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Jeanette, thank you for coming. Incredible. I'm so grateful to have you as a friend.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And thanks for leading.
You're welcome.
Wonderful.
Oh, thank you. You guys, as always, do good things, make me proud, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.